The Bible is a book full of mysteries, invisible realms, and enigmatic beings that challenge our understanding. From the 24 elders surrounding the throne of God to the terrifying Leviathan from the depths, each of them carries a hidden Meaninga-coded message within the sacred scriptures. But who are these beings? Do they truly exist, or are they just symbols of something greater? Imagine being able to decipher the secrets of celestial and infernal creatures, understand what they represent, and how they influence reality. After all, when we talk about cherubim, seraphim, and demons, we are dealing with forces that operate beyond what the human eye can see. If you've ever wondered what the Bible reveals about these enigmas, get ready. This journey might change your perspective on the spiritual world forever. Throughout this content, we will dive into biblical descriptions, explore interpretations, and uncover the roles of these beings within God's divine plan. But be warned, some revelations might challenge everything you thought you knew. Are you ready to embark on this investigation? John, when describing his vision of heaven in the book of Revelation, mentions an intriguing group, the 24 elders, seated on thrones around the throne of God. Dressed in white robes and wearing golden crowns, they appear to hold a place of great honor in the heavenly hierarchy. But who are they? Many scholars debate whether they represent the glorified church, the patriarchs and apostles, or a distinct celestial order. Regardless of their identity, their presence suggests a fundamental role in heavenly worship and divine governance. Interestingly, these 24 elders are seen prostrating themselves before God, casting their crowns as a sign of absolute submission. This striking scene symbolizes God's sovereignty and reminds us that all authority in heaven and on earth comes from the Creator. If even these powerful beings recognize God's greatness, what does that say about our own posture before Him? What does it truly mean to live a life that acknowledges God's dominion over all things? Furthermore, there is a prophetic aspect to the number 24. In the Old Testament, there were 24 priestly divisions, which leads us to wonder, could the 24 elders symbolize a celestial priesthood? If so, this reinforces the idea that heaven follows a perfect order, where every being plays a specific role in the grand divine symphony. The question remains, if there is a structured government in heaven, how does that shape our understanding of divine judgment and humanity's role in God's eternal plan? Ezekiel's vision is one of the most enigmatic passages in the Bible. In the first chapter of the book of Ezekiel, the prophet describes a set of wheels full of eyes that move in all directions without turning. These mysterious structures appear to be part of what seems to be the divine chariot, a celestial vehicle that accompanies the glory of God. But what exactly do these wheels represent? Many associate their appearance with God's omniscience, as the eyes scattered across them symbolize His absolute knowledge of all things. Beyond its spiritual significance, Ezekiel's wheels have been the subject of numerous theories, ranging from theological interpretations to bold speculations. Some scholars believe they represent the cherubim, celestial beings that uphold and carry the glory of God. Others take it further, suggesting hypotheses about advanced technology or even the presence of supernatural visitors in the past. Regardless of the interpretation, this vision demonstrates that God's presence is not confined to a single location, but can manifest in a dynamic and astonishing way. The intriguing question is, why did God choose to show this vision to Ezekiel? The answer may lie in the context of the revelation. The prophet was among the exiles in Babylon, a people who believed that God's presence was limited to the temple in Jerusalem. But the wheels revealed that God can go anywhere at any time. This teaches us something fundamental. God's presence is not confined to a physical space, but is accessible to those who truly seek Him. If God moves, are we ready to follow the direction He is pointing us to? The behemoth is one of the most mysterious creatures in the Bible, mentioned in the book of Job as a colossal and imposing being created by God Himself. Its description suggests a creature of unparalleled strength, with bones like bars of iron and powerful muscles. But what exactly is this being? Some scholars believe the behemoth could be a hippopotamus or an elephant, while others argue that it might represent an extinct dinosaur. Regardless of its true identity, what is clear is that it symbolizes the greatness and power of God over all creation. Interestingly, the behemoth is described as a peaceful creature, feeding on vegetation and dwelling in swampy regions. Unlike creatures associated with chaos and destruction, it appears as a testament to the unshakable force of nature. But there is a deeper meaning in this passage. God mentions the behemoth to show Job that there are things far beyond human understanding. Just as man cannot tame this creature, he also cannot fully comprehend God's divine plans. This lesson invites us to reflect, how much do we truly trust God, even when we don't have all the answers? Another intriguing detail is that the behemoth appears in the same context as the Leviathan, another enigmatic and feared creature. While the behemoth is associated with land and stability, the Leviathan represents the chaos of the seas. This duality may symbolize the balance of the universe, where opposing forces coexist under God's sovereignty. In the end, the message seems clear: no matter how powerful the creatures of the world may be, none compare to the Creator. Do we recognize this reality in our daily lives? Or do we still try to measure God within the limits of our own logic? If there is one biblical creature that inspires both fascination and fear, it is the Leviathan. Mentioned in the book of Job, Psalms, and the book of Isaiah, it is described as a colossal sea monster, a beast that no man can tame. Its scales are like an impenetrable shield, its breath sets the air on fire, and its eyes shine like the morning light. But what exactly does it represent? Some interpretations see it as a crocodile, others as a mythological dragon, while some scholars suggest it may be a symbol of the primordial chaos that God subdues. The figure of the Leviathan also appears in contexts of divine judgment and spiritual warfare. In the book of Isaiah, God promises to destroy it with a sharp sword, which many interpret as a sign of the final triumph over the forces of evil. This creature, then, may symbolize the resistance of evil against divine order, something that will ultimately be completely defeated at the end of time. This leads us to reflect, what are the Leviathans we face in our lives? There are forces that seem untamable, challenges that make us feel small, but do we remember that God is greater than any storm? Another interesting interpretation is that the Leviathan may be linked to Lucifer, Satan, and his rebellion against God. Its description as an imposing and immortal being may represent the forces that attempt to challenge divine sovereignty. However, just as the Bible guarantees the defeat of the Leviathan, it also affirms that evil will come to an end. The challenge for us is, are we aligned with God's plan? Or are we being swept away by the currents of chaos? Just as God has power over the Leviathan, He can also give us the strength to overcome the battles we face. The cherubim have been mentioned since the book of Genesis, when God placed them to guard the entrance to the Garden of Eden with a flaming sword, preventing fallen man from accessing the tree of life. But who are these celestial beings? Throughout the Bible, cherubim appear as powerful creatures, close to God's presence, serving as guardians of the sacred and messengers of His will. Unlike the popular image of cute little angels, the biblical cherubim are imposing beings of great authority. In the book of Ezekiel, they appear in a majestic vision, with multiple face-off: a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle and wings covering their bodies. This symbolic description suggests that they represent different aspects of creation intelligence: man, strength lion, service ox, and vision eagle. Additionally, cherubim are seen surrounding the throne of God, demonstrating that their primary function is to exalt divine omniscience and protect the holiness of the Creator. Their presence reinforces the idea that nothing impure can approach God without being purified. Another striking detail is that Satan, before his fall, was called the anointed cherub. This makes us think, if even a being so close to God fell because of pride, how much more should we remain vigilant in our spiritual walk? The story of the cherubim teaches us that authority and closeness to God do not guarantee immunity from falling. Instead, they bring even greater responsibility. Are we truly seeking a relationship with God based on humility and obedience? Just as the cherubim protect divine holiness, are we protecting our faith from influences that try to pull us away from Him? The seraphim are one of the most enigmatic and sublime classes of celestial beings mentioned in the Bible. In the book of Isaiah, they appear in the prophet's grand vision, surrounding the throne of God and continuously proclaiming, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." This repetition is not accidental. In Hebrew thought, a triple repetition emphasizes something absolute, indicating that God's holiness is supreme and incomparable. But who exactly are the seraphim? Their name means the burning ones or the flaming ones, suggesting that they are beings intensely connected to divine fire. Unlike the cherubim, who are often depicted as guardians of divine holiness, the seraphim seem to have a role centered on heavenly worship and spiritual purification. In Isaiah's vision, one of them touches the prophet's lips with a burning coal, purifying him and preparing him for his mission. This act symbolizes that no one can speak in God's name without first undergoing a transformation. And this brings us to a fundamental point. Are we allowing God to purify us so we can fulfill our purpose? Another fascinating detail is that the seraphim are described with 6 wings, 2 covering their face, 2 covering their feet, and 2 for flying. This image conveys a powerful message. Covering their face, they demonstrate extreme reverence before God's glory. Covering their feet, they show humility and recognition that they stand before the Creator. And with the wings to fly, they swiftly carry out God's commands. This teaches us something essential the closer we are to God, the greater our humility and readiness to serve Him should be. Are we placing ourselves in this position, or are we getting distracted by the things of the world? Few biblical figures are as mysterious as Melchizedek. He appears suddenly in the book of Genesis, with no genealogy, no recorded past, and no explanation of his origin or destiny. Called the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God, he blesses Abraham and receives tithes from him, an act that suggests a position of great spiritual authority. But who was he? A mere man, a celestial being, or a manifestation of Christ before his incarnation? These questions remain unanswered, making him one of the most fascinating enigmas in the Bible. The book of Hebrews deepens this mystery by comparing Melchizedek to Jesus Christ. The letter states that Christ is a priest according to the order of Melchizedek, meaning a priesthood not based on the Levitical lineage, but on an eternal divine calling. This challenges the traditional religious structure of the Old Testament and points to something greater, a heavenly priesthood, independent of earthly systems. But what does this mean for us? If Jesus is our high priest according to this mysterious order, then our faith is not based on human rituals, but on divine grace. Another interesting point is that Salem, the city where Melchizedek was king, is identified as the future Jerusalem. This adds prophetic significance to his story, directly linking him to God's plan for redemption. He appears and disappears from the scriptures without explanation, as if he were a glimpse of something greater. His brief appearance delivers a profound message: God can raise up unexpected people and situations to fulfill his purposes. The question is, are we paying attention to God's signs in our lives, or are we only expecting him to act in predictable ways? Demons are presented in the Bible as fallen angels, spiritual beings who rebelled against God and began working against humanity. Unlike how popular culture often portrays them, they're not just hideous creatures or mythological figures, but entities with intelligence, free will, and the ability to deceive. Since the fall of Lucifer, these beings have been operating on Earth with the purpose of destroying, deceiving, and drawing humans away from God's presence. They can influence thoughts, circumstances, and even possess people, as seen in various accounts in the New Testament. The Bible makes it clear that demons are organized within a spiritual kingdom, following a hierarchy of power under the command of Satan. The book of Ephesians states that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and the spiritual forces of evil. This means that a real spiritual war is constantly taking place, often without us even realizing it. Demons operate primarily through deception, spreading false teachings, promoting fear, and distancing people from God's truth. This raises an important question: are we being vigilant, or are we leaving spiritual openings that make us vulnerable? Despite their influence, demons do not have absolute power. Jesus demonstrated this by casting them out with authority, proving that those who are in God's covenant have no reason to fear them. God's power is always greater, but the Bible warns us about the importance of being spiritually prepared. Prayer, knowledge of Scripture, and a life aligned with God are the main weapons against these forces. In the end, the choice is ours: do we live in the light, or do we allow darkness to operate in our lives? After all, what we spiritually feed ourselves with determines the influence it will have over us. Lucifer, also known as Satan, was originally a high-ranking angel, described as a being of immense beauty and wisdom. In the book of Ezekiel, he is referred to as the anointed cherub who walked among the fiery stones, suggesting that he held a special role near the throne of God. However, his pride led to his downfall. In Isaiah 14, we find a famous passage: "I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. I will exalt my throne. I will be like the Most High." This attempt to usurp divine glory resulted in his fall and the rebellion of Satan, who dragged a legion of angels with him. After his expulsion from heaven, Satan became the great adversary of God's plan. In the book of Job, he appears challenging human faithfulness to God, attempting to prove that humans serve the Creator only out of self-interest. In the New Testament, he is portrayed as the prince of this world, the one who blinds understanding and leads many astray. His primary methods of attack are lies, distortion of truth, and temptation, as seen in the Garden of Eden and even with Jesus in the wilderness. This raises a crucial question: do we recognize his traps, or are we falling into them without realizing it? Despite being a powerful enemy, Satan is not omnipotent, omniscient, or omnipresent. The Bible makes it clear that his fate is sealed in the book of Revelation. He will be cast into the lake of fire and sulfur, where he will be defeated forever. Until then, his strategy is to deceive, corrupt, and make people doubt the power of God. But we have a promise: those who live in Christ have the authority to resist the evil one. The question is, are we living in that authority, or are we allowing fear and doubt to control us? In the end, the battle is not just between good and evil, but about who we choose to serve. The mysterious beings of the Bible show us that there is far more happening in the spiritual realm than we can perceive. From celestial creatures that worship God to those who rebelled against him, each plays a role in God's divine plan. But the big question is, how does this impact our lives? If there is a throne of God, there is also judgment. If there is a spiritual war, then there's a side we must choose. The Bible does not present these figures merely as curiosities, but as reminders that the spiritual world is real and that its forces influence us. In light of all this, we must ask ourselves, are we prepared? Have we been living as those who acknowledge God's power, or as those who ignore this reality? Just as the seraphim continually proclaim the holiness of the Lord and the cherubim guard his glory, we too must take a stand. Understanding these beings is not just about satisfying curiosity, but about reflecting on our relationship with God and the importance of being spiritually strong. If you want to keep exploring these mysteries and understand how they apply to your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we will dive even deeper into the secrets of the Bible and the spiritual warfare happening around us. Which of these beings caught your attention the most? Leave a comment and share this content with someone who also needs to learn about these revelations.